Hip hop, hip hop, hip hop, hip
Bars is back.
hip hop,
SamAnt
oh
O'God. Lost.
Now, when you went into the police station and they began questioning you and things like that, you were 100% honest with them under the assumption that you being honest the truth would set you free almost to, so to speak. You would be honest and then everything will work itself out. But that wasn't the case. And obviously, if you would have had a lawyer present and things were a little different, maybe circumstances would have been different. But it seems as though you're very contrite and very sincere about the wrong that you felt like you did at that time, murdering the man in that situation. How do you feel about the time? Do you feel as though now, looking back on it, that it may have saved your life? Or do you think that, no, I should have did it different and kind of went about it the right way and grabbed a lawyer and maybe did the process and I wouldn't have done so much time?
You know, whenever the officers, when they came and they talked with me, they flat out said, one of the detectives said, you know, whether you talk to me is going to be the difference between 9 years and 99 years. And for me, that made it really clear what the right choice was. Unfortunately, that conversation that we had wasn't on record. It wasn't on video because it was illegal. That's something that they do quite often. Anytime you bring it up in court, they're going to lie about it. But, you know, their objective is to try to gather as much evidence as possible to use against you. Anything you say, they want to use it in the worst possible way. But when you're a kid in that situation, you know, you just think, well, I mean, if this man is telling me that, you know, he's going to help me get this deal, then I need to take it because I may not have another opportunity.
Right.
So I definitely thought that I was doing the right thing. Obviously now I wish I had an attorney who was there to help me through that. And at least my parents, you know, from the moment that they found out that I was 16 years old, like everything else should have gone out the window.
Absolutely, a minor. Right.
So, yeah.
Can you talk about, I think you said you spent 2 years in solitary confinement. How did that affect you? And what were those days like, being alone for 23 hours? Can you talk to the people about that? How you made it through?
Yeah, so I actually spent 3 years, 2 years in the county jail. And then whenever I went to the prison, I spent another year after that because I was having trouble adjusting. But, you know, I was 16. And I mean, if you think about solitary confinement, there's grown men that can't really handle the psychological element of being locked in a box that's about the size of most of your bathrooms for 23 hours a day. And sometimes 24 hours a day, because they like to say that, you know, they give you an hour every day for shower, for phone, or for rec. But I'm here to tell you that's not always the case. There was many days that I was forgotten. There was many days that officers even forgot to feed me when I was back there in segregation. So it was really rough. It's extremely, extremely psychologically taxing. Just being in that box and then being in that box and really trying to process all the trauma that you went through to get in that situation in the first place. You don't have anyone that's really there to help you. As I said, they're just trying to shove pills down your throat. So really you're just a kid trying to figure it out all on your own. And you know, this is stuff that adults would have trouble figuring out. So, you know, like I said, the fact that I'm here of sound mind and have my sanity, man, it's by the grace of God, because it was rough. It was really, really rough. And, you know, there were times that I did have, you know, nervous breakdowns where it's like, man, like this is overwhelming. But, you know, I'm here and I live to tell it.
Unfortunately, you know, we're in a situation in a world where a lot of these disgusting things happen. And on the flip side, you have a lot of situations where the person who claims the victim, they lie. And it kind of just puts a stain on the people that are really going through it. But it is the reality of this world. Some people do it, and it is what it is. So you get that conversation of, are they lying? Are they not? And this is why certain people don't come out and say certain things. Can you talk about for somebody, the young girl or even the young boy that may be going through something right now that's afraid to talk about what they're going through, why it is beneficiary for them to say something to somebody and get the right people in place for them to get out of that?
You should always stand for truth. You know, the entire time that, you know, I was going through the court process, I felt like I wasn't listened to. Anything I said, you know, the district attorney, he tried to tear it apart. You're always going to have, you know, the officers who try to tear it apart. You know, even when I was 29 at my hearing, 28, 29 years old, the detective for my case, he came out and was like, well, I don't know where this trafficking is coming from. She was doing what she wanted to do. So everybody doesn't get it. Everybody's not going to get it, but you know your truth and you stand in that. And, that's really important. If there's something that's happened to you, if you've been a victim of something, you speak up, you have that right. You take back that power, but don't allow anybody to silence you. And for the rest of the world, we can't allow, someone who has lied about that to affect the way that we perceive actual victims. There comes a time when you have to evaluate situations, right? And we can't just discount or discredit every single person that comes forward saying, well, maybe she's lying like she did, or maybe he's not telling the truth because he lied too. It's an individual by individual basis.
Is there any remorse? We know, the situation, the circumstances, but do you ever sit back and have any remorse for taking the individual's life, regardless of the circumstances?
Oh, of course. I'd be lying if I told you that, even with the circumstances, you still don't feel some kind of way. I had to sit in a courtroom and, hear his family's pain. I've never met these people. They did absolutely nothing to me. And, because of what happened between me and him, now they're dealing with something that they'll never really recover from for the rest of their life. And so, of course, you feel that. And, how can you not? And it doesn't matter what happens. That you could be driving down the road and you accidentally hit someone. You're going to feel that remorse. It could be an accident. You still feel that, there's someone who was living. There's someone who had a life and now they're gone. And you had involvement in that.
Looking back at it now, obviously as an adult, would you do anything different if you had the opportunity to go back as that 16-year-old child back then?
Yeah, I would have stayed at the house with my mom and continue going to church every Sunday morning, every Wednesday night.
Right. It's been safe, right?
Yeah. I thought it was rough. Being in school was like everything felt like the end of the world that was happening. Yeah. But man, if I had it to do over right now, man, I'd be right back in that classroom. I didn't care who accepted me. I didn't care what they liked about me, what they didn't like about me. I listened to my mom when she told me, you go to school to learn. That's what you're there for. Right. Get back to the house and do what I had to do. But yeah, of course, I would have never left home.
So at what point, when you were sitting in prison, did you realize that you might be granted clemency? At what point, and how did that feeling feel when you say, it's possible I can actually get out early?
So when I met Jamie, it was, I think, 3 months after my very last appeal was denied. And that was my federal appeal. Whenever you get convicted of a crime, you have about 3 appeals. You have your direct appeal after you file a motion for a new trial. You have your post-conviction appeal there in the state. And then you have your federal habeas corpus. With your federal habeas corpus, if you lose that appeal, they have to tell you whether or not you can appeal it to a higher court. In my case, I lost the appeal and they told me that I could not appeal it. So that was it for my appeals. I had no more appeals left. The only chance that I had was for clemency. And in my state, less than 1% of people who apply for clemency actually get it. So slim to none, basically.
Yeah.
My only chance. And, whenever I met Jamie, he was, telling me that God had said that I was going to get out. And I was like, okay, yeah. Because, at that time, I had struggled so heavy with my faith where, I had come to a point where I said, I don't even believe in God anymore. I don't believe it because, I prayed every single day that I not be given life in prison. And here I am serving life in prison. And my very last appeal has been denied. Like, I don't believe in that anymore. And, he told me bluntly, he was like, girl, you don't believe because you haven't met his son, Jesus. And, he started walking me through his own testimony and telling me more about, his life. Because when I looked at him, it was like, man, he's got it all together. He's got it all figured out. Like, he's lived a great life. He couldn't possibly relate. But the more we talked, the more I saw, like, how similar our lives had been. And, how God got him through that and how his faith got him through that. I was like, man, maybe I should give it a try. And, we started praying on my petition. And the more we started praying, the more we just put everything in God's hand, that's when things started opening up. We started seeing support from people that we would have never thought supported, my case. The victims advocacy groups here in Tennessee, which always advocate for victims of crime, and they're always the ones to show up and protest parole hearings. They actually supported me. Two of the largest groups in the state of Tennessee not only wrote me a letter, they showed up at my hearing that I was granted later on, and they supported me.
Wow.
We were getting support left and right. And then this was actually months before the hashtag event happened. And, when that happened and it blew up, I called my husband, my now husband, Jamie, and I was like, have you seen this? Have you heard this? He was like, well, are you surprised? What did I tell you about what God can do when you put things in his hands? And I was like, man, he's really going to get me out of here, isn't he? You said he told you he was getting me out of prison. I'm about to get out of prison, aren't I? And, that's what really sealed it for me when I was like, man, like this is real. And, we went through some time after that where it was like we didn't hear anything from the governor's office. We were getting some negative feedback from people in his office. But I was like, nope, I don't want to hear that. God said I'm getting out. I'm getting out. I'm going to get this clemency.